Welcome, everyone. I'm Katie Capuzzo, General Manager of WISE, and together we're a global community dedicated to empowering women in sales with the network and the knowledge needed to be successful. Huge thanks to our longtime partner, Autodesk, for sponsoring today's event. Autodesk is changing the way the world is designed and made, and with over 100 million people using their software, they span architecture, engineering, construction, product design, manufacturing, and media and entertainment. Autodesk is hiring for a variety of go to market roles in the US, Spain, Jordan, and beyond. And I'm thrilled that we have on today's panel representation from each of those geos as we discuss firsthand experiences of identifying and owning your leadership abilities. Autodesk's values, there are several, so let's run through these, are smart, inclusive, courageous, innovative, impactful, accountable, agile, humble, and pragmatic. So the panelists joining us are going to tell us the value that they most identify with and a bit more about themselves. But first, let me introduce Veronica Babridge, Technical Solutions Executive, Aisha Abd AL-Fattah, Territory Sales Manager, and Natalie Ellis, Director of Design and Manufacturing Inside Sales. Veronica, let's start with you to tell us a bit more about yourself.
Sure. So I am just 3 years into the technical solutions role, originally from Metro Detroit, but currently coming to you from Chicago. And I know one of the things we were supposed to share is our most favorite value, and mine is innovative. That is one of the reasons why I have enjoyed this role at Autodesk, is because we get to be very creative on coming up with solutions and ways for our customers to create, to innovate, to bring new products to market. So that pulls on my engineering and technology background, while also getting me to really work with customers and see new things every day on how people approach just the technology world.
Awesome. Thank you. Natalie, I'll hand it over to you next.
Hi everyone, pleasure to be here today. So I'm speaking to you guys from Barcelona in Spain. I've been living here for 13, 14 years now, and I've been at Autodesk in Barcelona for just over 7 years. And I'm originally from the UK, but I've spent most of my kind of professional life actually in Spain. And when I was thinking about the answer to this question, so looking at the values, I think there are some kind of shinier ones, but one for me that I think is really important, especially in leadership, is pragmatism. So one of ours is around being pragmatic. And I think when it comes to things like giving feedback, it's really important to be pragmatic and try and hone that skill throughout your career. Because it can only be something that's positively impactful to how we work together. So that's what I'm going to say, pragmatic.
I love that. Aisha?
Okay, so I'm Aisha and I'm based in Jordan from the Middle East. I look after the territory sales job for Middle East and Turkey. I've been in Autodesk since 4 years, and I bring 15 years of experience in the IT tech industry. I'm very passionate about digital transformation, adoption of digital tools in work, and personal branding. Outside of work, I'm a mother of three girls who inspires me every day. And regarding the value, I'm more connected into collaborative and acting as one Autodesk because this principle highlights the importance of reaching across boundaries and engaging with each other to achieve faster and better results together. So, yes, collaborative.
Awesome. I love that everyone had a different one. And that probably is really reflective of the entire employee base at Autodesk. And we'll get a bit more into that throughout the conversation today. Before we jump in, as a reminder to the audience, let us know where you're tuning in from in the chat. And if you have any questions throughout the conversation, and there's an ask a question feature on the right side of your screen, drop them in there and we'll get to it during the Q&A portion in a bit. So let's jump in. This question is for all of you. We'll kick it off first with you, Natalie. All three of you are in different roles and countries, like I mentioned, but you're looked up to as leaders within Autodesk. So how would you characterize an effective leader?
I mean, it's a broad question to start off with, Katie. So I think
I know I'm making it difficult right off the jump.
Yeah, yeah. There's lots of research and books, and millions been spent on answering this question in the right way. But I think from my the time that I've been leading teams, so more than 10 years now, and in different places around the world, and different types of teams and different cultures. I think one of the most important things when you lead a team is actually to build people who are self-sufficient and independent on their own. And I think early on in your career, it's very easy to get kind of worried about all the things that you don't know, and maybe all the things that your team know more about than what you know. And it can be easy to get intimidated by that. But actually, you're there to help build people to be more self-sufficient, to grow, to develop, to know, build their own knowledge, build their own relationships, build their skills and their experiences in certain roles. And actually giving people the answers to everything doesn't help them to get there. So for me, one thing that's really important is building people who can be independent, can be self-sufficient, can go out and build a network and develop themselves towards the career goals that they want to achieve with your support. And the other thing that's really important is to build trust. And it's not an easy thing. And I think trust can be a bit of a tag word. But building culture where you're really intentional about building trust with a team, because it just helps you build that relationship and get moving as quickly as you can in that sort of, feedback environment. So those two things are important for me when I think about answering that question.
Mm-hmm. I know it was a big one to start, but you did great. That was good kicking off. Aisha, do you have anything to add to that?
So from my side, I will add a different point of view for effective leader. What Natalie said is really amazing, but also sometimes it's effective leader regardless of the title, because you can be a leader even if you are not a manager. Effective leader sets a positive example. They communicate effectively and proactively support team members' development. They focus on building strong relationships, understanding people motivations, and fostering a collaborative environment where they collectively can achieve goals. So I think also sometimes it's very important to highlight, like, leadership is not connected only with your title. You can be always a leader even if you are not a manager, if you are not a senior director, etc. It's very important as individual to highlight that we can all be leaders, and everyone is a leader in their own way. So that's something that I can add on top of what Natalie's.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you said that, because not only is title aside when it comes to leadership, but seniority level is also aside. You can be a leader in an entry level role, your first role out of school, or the first one you take on even when you're in school. So there are different ways that can happen, and we'll get into ways to foster that ability and skill set throughout the conversation. Veronica, what's your take on this?
Sure. I have some different takes on that. I came from being a manager and managing a team, and now in an individual contributor role. So having to adjust from being that person that's managing a team and maybe setting direction, to then going back into an individual contributor role and receiving that direction. But one of the things that Autodesk does is we do a Berkman assessment, which is very cool because you get to identify the uniqueness of each individual that you're working with, and what stresses show up for them, where do they perform their best, and how to better work together as a team. And so what stands out for me in leadership is just the individual needs and requirements of each person, and how that comes into play when you talk about leadership, and just being open to that. Is one of the big things about Autodesk's culture, is that we see the unique qualities of all our different employees, and understand that we don't expect everyone to be the same. We actually appreciate the diversity of our teams.
Mm-hmm. We'll be sure to link that assessment that you mentioned, because I think it'd be helpful for people to have reference to that afterwards. And Veronica, we're going to stick with you for this next question. So you have a very technical skill set, as you mentioned, a background actually in engineering. It's less common to see female engineers, and even more so with a traditional industry like manufacturing. So as the first woman in the technical solutions executive role within design and manufacturing at Autodesk, how did you influence the environment and culture of the team to create a welcoming space for future female hires? And I'll mention that now there are 3 of you, so you've done something right.
Correct. I think the big thing is noticing that also the manufacturing environment as a whole is changing, right? So our how we look as Autodesk should also reflect how our customers now look. So I think that's a big piece of it. Uh, Manufacturing design that looks different now than it did 5, 10, 20 years ago. And we should look like our customers look and reflect that and be able to have those conversations from different perspectives. I came from a heavy duty diesel engine industry. I was the only woman in a lot of environments. And I did have to make some adjustments on leadership style. I do have my own persona that is very different. And just being able to explain that a lot of times, my team being very open to ways that I do things versus themselves and being open to that input and feedback, I think is very important. And that just having different approaches to now taking my engineering and technical background that comes into play in the design and manufacturing sales role, because I can actually speak to those experiences, speak to that environment, and speak to my unique experiences as a woman in that field does matter. When we're talking about process and innovation and how people think, that comes into play. And you want to capture all that to make sure that your designs are reflecting those things. Uh, I used to be a test subject in cars because I was a fifth percentile woman when airbags came out. And so you need to reflect all the different environments and people that your products are going to touch. And so I think having a diverse sales organization that's talking to a diverse design and manufacturing organization is a true benefit in the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that sometimes when we talk about being the only woman in the room, there can automatically be a negative association with that. But to know that actually it's a positive, you bring a different perspective, you have a different persona, to your point. They need to test an airbag for you as well. So I think that's really helpful perspective. Thank you for sharing that. Aisha, you also have a degree in engineering, which is kind of ironic, but you quickly realized that your passion for people outweighs the passion for systems. You joined Autodesk as an individual contributor and within 2 years had the opportunity to transition to management. How would you describe your management style and what are some key wins you're most proud of as a manager?
Okay, so yes, I moved out from engineering, but let's say specialty. I find out like I'm more passionate about working with people, with business development, with pre-sales, and etc. And I joined Autodesk 4 years back as individual contributor, although I was like a leader before joining Autodesk. But Autodesk is a place that you can master a lot of leadership skills without being a manager. I started as individual contributor, and after 2 years, I got the opportunity to move to a manager. While also I was pregnant in my 8th month, but Autodesk even provide me with this opportunity, which is an amazing. Regarding my management, let's say style, I'm more into people oriented and centered. I'm very proactive about like the positive impact that I can provide to stakeholders and team members I'm working with. I prioritize always unlocking the hidden potential and fostering authentic connection with employees. So I feel like when you provide more value to everyone you are working with, that will easily impact that value provided to your customers, to your teammates, to the organization as whole, because you are more into connecting with people to support them grow in their business, in their professional life, and at the same time in their personal development. So that always impact on holistically like a development of personal and professional for the organization and more financial success always. Main wins or key wins during these 2 years, always like seeing and witnessing your team members growing and getting more opportunities is something that is really rewarding. I remember last year I started the territory sales team in Middle East with 3 sales reps. and two of them were promoted to upper positions to strategic territory sales and within a year. And for me, like, I heard a lot of people, why you are offering them these opportunities, because that will affect your sustainability, your work as a territory sales manager. I just let them know, I will not stop in any one pathway. My success is when I see more people get more success and get more opportunities. I got people supported me to get this opportunity, and I will offer always opportunities for people around me to access and develop more and get more and higher positions within Autodesk. So yes, I think this, that every time like you see a success for one of your teammates, your team members, is really something rewarding for a manager.
What an incredible perspective. I think a lot of us probably can aspire to be a manager like that and have managers like that that really celebrate the success of their team. So that's great to hear. Natalie, your sales career began as a business development representative at a tech company, and within 9 months, you'd made such an impact that you were promoted to team manager. Looking back, I'm curious, how did you find your voice and confidence as a leader so early in your career?
Yeah, it's when we were talking about this question, I was reflecting on it because it's actually a very interesting question. So actually, just before that, actually my very early career, I was teaching, and what I loved about the teaching experience, obviously this was way before COVID. You know, you're in a room with people. What I loved about that experience was the connection with lots of different people from different environments. We had fun, we had a really good time, we learned together, they got better, they achieved whatever goals they wanted to. They were there to learn a language, so they wanted to go off and do something. And I loved that part of the job. And later on, I wanted to look for something where I could have more of a long career, and I moved into a sales role. And I think I just sort of I fell into the opportunity and kind of discovered, actually, I really loved sales as well. Just again, it's about connection with people, it's about connecting about something, and it's about relationships. And then I had this opportunity again. It was just an opportunity that was there, and I decided to push myself and go for it. And I was early in my career, you know, I was early 20s, and at that time didn't have a huge amount of professional experience, but I just discovered this passion for people, for connecting, for, you know, helping people to understand what did they want to do, what did they identify with, and maybe helping them to get there. And I always remember one of my managers at that time, he told me, your job is to make these people better at this job than you could be yourself. And I took that on reflection and thought, okay, actually that's my goal. I'm trying to make these people even better than I could possibly be at this role, and that's going to look like success for the individuals and for the team. So I think I just have always followed my passion, which is around people and connection. And you know, for me, this kind of Zoom environment is less engaging for me. I love to be with people in rooms and, you know, doing things and whiteboards. But I've just followed that passion. And I think when you really discover something that you're super passionate about and you can make a career out of it, that just becomes something else entirely. So I think, you know, I did find a voice and a confidence, but it came from a passion that was just kind of inside me, and that I'm still super passionate about today.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really helpful perspective for those that are even considering, do I want to go into management or not? Aisha and Natalie both spoke on the importance of having this people first mentality and really wanting to see the success of others. Whereas an individual contributor sometimes really looks for crushing their own quota. Nothing is wrong with that. But as a manager, you are rooting for the team quota and getting them there versus yourself. So that's helpful. Yeah. I'm curious, Natalie, when you look back at that early career, aside from the passion that you had, do you recall any aha moments of like, okay, that was an opportunity where I got to voice my own opinion, or I got to challenge maybe management in some way, and that worked well, or it didn't work well, and so I need to pivot how I approach these tougher conversations? Because even I think as an early manager, sometimes you're managing your peers, and that can be tricky.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it goes back to a little bit what we were speaking about at the beginning, in that you're there to help people find, okay, what are the areas that I can be better at, and what are my strengths that I'm already good at that I can make even stronger and be even more impactful. And there's a misconception that actually a manager just needs to know everything, and the person that knows the most is the person that gets promoted. But I think nowadays that isn't really the case, and you look for people who they are really good at having difficult conversations with people and really good at giving feedback. And I think that was probably for me at the beginning of my career, the parts that I would be more anxious about, or I knew what had to be done, but it was hard for me to kind of face up to that conversation or that reality, or thinking about how do I phrase this in the right way, or and I think focusing on that and having more challenging conversations, and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone in that way and getting kind of used to it and seeing the benefits of giving people quite pragmatic and straightforward feedback, and helping to connect that a little bit like what Aisha was talking about, connect that to their long-term motivation and where they want to go in their career and what's driving them intrinsically. Is it their family? Is it something that they want to achieve in a certain time frame? So I think that connection and pushing myself out of my comfort zone when it came to that kind of conversations early on helped to give me confidence, and it also helped to give other people confidence and myself credibility, and that actually that was the skill, and that's the reason that I was in the role, not because I knew more about industry or certain things that probably they knew a lot more and could teach me, but actually it was that kind of feedback and stepping back and helping them to focus on development. So I think that's a way of focusing on always thinking about how are you pushing yourself? What is something that you're working on being better at today and tomorrow? Something that you can practice all the time and ask other people for feedback about, and not being shy about sharing as well and asking for others to help you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are all really great pieces of advice. Veronica, you mentioned this earlier, this big career transition from engineering to sales. What led to that decision, and how has it been going, the adaptation from that role into a quota carrying role?
So I want to just talk a little bit about sales and how much of selling we do every day, right? The first responsibility you have after you graduate with your college degree is to sell yourself, right? I came into sales from a project management role. And in project management, I worked for consulting firms. And so what I was selling was people, was individual engineering resources that could get a job done, that could do it efficiently, that could do it with a particular level of quality or skill set, and a track record that we could do this over and over again. We could meet your deadlines, your timelines, and budget accordingly. And so when I found all those transitional skills that I had already been doing day after day, selling yourself, selling your team, selling an idea, selling a new process, you find a lot of things that you're already doing and how important the sales skill set is for any role and whatever you do in a career. Sales is very important. And when I really put all that together, I wanted to go gain more strength in that area while doing something that I already have a good foundation in technology and manufacturing and engineering. And so it hasn't been that big of a jump. It's definitely a mind shift on your deliverables day to day. Instead of delivering a design or something that you can physically hold, it's looking at different customers that you've impacted over time. Yes, you do have a sales quota. That is something that you have to adjust to. Being a commission-based employee sometimes can be different, and the way that you're watching numbers can be fun and exciting, and sometimes a little stressful when you're coming up to the end of the year and end of the quarter and hoping that those particular opportunities that you've been working on actually cross the finish line. But I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun, and yeah, it's a lot of things that I've kind of grown over the years that I now get to use in this role.
Mm-hmm. It's a great point that we're always selling in some capacity. I think I hear a lot of times, especially from women in sales roles, that they just kind of fell into sales. They didn't have that as necessarily their plan. And I think it's really interesting that you kind of took a more proactive approach and made the decision to transition into sales, but that you did so because you'd already been doing it in some form or another in different roles and in consulting. So that's a really good viewpoint for those that are considering the transition themselves, that you've probably been doing it in some capacity.
Exactly.
Aisha, you're very involved in Autodesk's women's network, and you mentioned this earlier. You have a passion for personal branding. So tell us more about why that's so important to you and especially critical for women to put their brand into action.
Okay, so let's start with some facts about women, and where I started to focus more about personal branding, especially for women and everyone, to be honest. But there is a common workplace behavior that a woman do, that we believe that not taking credit is morally superior. And sometimes we expect others to notice our and reward our contribution without we showcase any great things we do. And also studies showed like women often underestimate their capabilities and abilities, and they are very cautious about self-promotion. And this is really affecting how confidently we can develop our personal brand, and if we want to compare this to men. But this is a common thing for women, that we don't highlight a lot of self-promotion. But the fact that results don't speak about themselves, only because we need to highlight our great jobs, we need to highlight our contribution, we need to showcase our great jobs, and etc. And many remarkable women remains unseen despite like their significant contribution to the community, not only to the job role or etc. Especially in MENA region, I will be like focusing on my region. I have less, let's say, accessibility on executive sales roles. Only 5% of women in sales, they can reach out to executive roles. However, like comparing with the globally, 20% of women, they achieve executive roles in sales. That was very important for me to start working on personal branding. And I will share with you my own story about personal branding and where I started. So in 2016, I joined a training sessions, and it was a very intensive training by the USAID, focusing on moving to a consultant as alone. And during this sessions, there was a focus on how to develop your network, your brand, and etc. And because I was based in Jordan, covering business in the Gulf region, there was like a lot of barriers for me. I can't be physical, I can't attend a lot of events, and etc. etc. And the amazing thing that happened in this session, and it was a life-changing moment, when the coach told me, "You don't have to be physical. We are in digital era. You have LinkedIn. Go and develop your brand and just connect it with your authentic Aisha, and you will manage to reflect a lot of things about you." And I started to be more intentional about this. Yes, why I'm saying that there is barriers, what I'm saying about, like, I'm putting a lot of obstacles for myself. I have LinkedIn. I started from there. I crafted my story. I crafted my brand, and I managed that everyone viewing my profile, they can know three things about me: who I am, what I do, and what sets me apart. And from that time, I have now more than 30K followers on LinkedIn. I've accelerated a lot of job opportunities from this just small thing that I did for myself. I started to connect with people more virtually. I started to speak about the great things that I do, connect with more people. And I find out like it's very important for everyone always to take care of their personal brand. And even with my team, the first thing that I start with always is personal branding. It's very important that everyone highlights their great things. Even as a manager, it's not easy for the manager to highlight and know all the strength points, all the good things for people. People should be intentional to highlight their strength points, their amazing jobs, whatever they did as something that need to be called out. They should reach out and speak about their amazing jobs. And this is really accelerate a lot of business and career development for everyone, men and women, but especially because women, like, we are somehow shy from highlighting our contributions and amazing jobs. It's very important for women always to be intentional about personal branding.
Mm-hmm. Such great points. And I think that, we've had other female leaders share that, you are your own best advocate. And I think a lot of times it can feel like, okay, great, but how do I actually put that into action? What do I do? And I think your points on making that presence on LinkedIn, that you don't have to be in person if you don't have that opportunity, to start today and make an impact in small ways, and that will grow over time. Hugely helpful. And congrats on 30K plus followers. That's incredible. So everyone go out and now follow, a good LinkedIn follow. Thank you for sharing that. Natalie, actually, Aisha spoke about this, of getting promoted when she was 8 months pregnant. I did not know that. And then in our conversation, that came out that some of your big promotions at Autodesk actually coincided with pregnancy as well. How did you navigate the additional responsibility pre and post maternity leave? And also kudos to Autodesk that this seems to be a theme that is not the case at a lot of companies, to really promote women knowing that they could be out of office for a specific amount of time with maternity leave. So just a side note, kudos to Autodesk. Yeah. Okay, Natalie, on to you.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's something you don't hear about that often. And when I share my story, so that I have two young sons, and my first pregnancy, so 5-6 years ago, I was promoted when I was 39 weeks pregnant. So I think that tells you a lot about Autodesk's willingness to promote women who are pregnant. We've also hired externally people who are already pregnant, and I think it just doesn't come into the conversation. It's the conversation is about who's the right person for the role, and that's not something that happens everywhere. So we are really privileged and lucky for that to be our, something that's it's happened multiple times on this call, 3 times. So I think that I'm really passionate about this topic in general, about, supporting working parents, in particular working mothers. But I think when you go through this process, pregnancy, having a child, coming back to work, it's a life-changing event. And, you come back to work a different person than you were when you left. And there's some really interesting research that was done by Dr. Golden, who recently won the Nobel Prize for the work that she did on the gender pay gap and gender equality over time. And she talks about actually a misconception around actually when you look at men and women in the workforce, actually they tend to increase their overall salary and earnings and increases at a reasonably similar rate until potentially a woman has a first child. And then when she comes back to work, she witnessed something called the motherhood effect, which is basically that women then experienced a lower level of growth versus men post children. And this she attributed to various factors like, reliability, or women's kind of willingness to kind of put themselves up into jobs that required more from them, or just, an assumption that women might not be as reliable post children. So, and I think my experience was actually the opposite, in that when I came back to work after having kids, before I had kids, I was super career oriented. I would sit in the office sometimes till 6:30 at night and think, oh no, I really should go home. And it was very, very focused on my career. And I think when I came back to work, your priorities, they naturally shift, because now you have a child to look after, and that your first priority has to be that child. But then the work that you do becomes even more meaningful, because the why that you have behind what you do is way bigger than it was before. It's not necessarily about your own growth or, money or whatever. It's about looking after a family and also being an example to, the adults that you're growing at home. And I think the meaning becomes even greater afterwards. And I think the misconception is actually that, work is less important, but actually it becomes so much more important to you because your purpose is different after you have kids. So I think we have to really appreciate the positive impact that it can also have on a person. It makes you more resilient. It makes you much more patient. It gives you access to these skills that you weren't aware of before. And you can be more productive in the same amount of time because you have no choice. You have to go and get your kids at this time. No one else can do it for you. So I think there's so many positives that can come out of this experience, and there are some misconceptions out there about actually the impact that it does have. And it's up to us as well to be that voice and show that that is the case. And also for us to advocate for others who are in those positions, and make sure that people get the same seat at the table, whether they're a parent or not, or whatever diversity they're bringing. So my experience around that has only been a positive one. And now, it's really important for me to advocate as well for people in the same situation that have to deal with those kind of challenges that it does bring inevitably to life.
Mm-hmm. Well, it even gives you a more dynamic point of view. And now, if you have direct reports going through that as well, you can be more empathetic to their situation and, cause proactive change across the board. You also touch on a really important point, which I've heard other leaders say, is that you become more productive with the smaller amount of time that you have because you're working for this greater purpose, but also you just become really great at juggling a lot of different things and a lot of different needs. So appreciate that perspective as well. Veronica, getting to Autodesk was 2 years in the making, thanks to COVID hiring freezes. What was it about the role in the company that kept you interested for so long?
So first, Autodesk has a very cool factor that I want to make sure we talk about. There's not many companies that you can say touches everything that we see in the world, from the tallest buildings to the fastest cars to all of the cool productions we see in the movies and even gaming. And so to work for a company that's leading that innovation and creativity, Autodesk has such a really nice, cool factor that just, it's always exciting to see the things that we're touching, whether I'm specifically involved or not, to see us featured on television and on billboards, and just know that we're making a difference is very important. I always connected with our mission, which is empower everyone everywhere to design and make anything. And it's truly anything. Whatever you dream up, we can help you put that down, not pencil and paper anymore, but right into existence, right into an image, into a character, into a storyline. And for me specifically in the design and manufacturing space, we have a lot of innovation going on with sustainability, use of different products and materials, lightweighting. And so helping our customers figure out how they're going to do that, what type of technology and resources they're going to use, how do they do these particular things with less people. We're in a challenge of trying to do things with less people. The technology world is strained for resources. We need more engineers. We need more STEM professionals, science, technology, engineering, and math. And there's a lot of change that's happened since a big hiring push, as far as even the shift that we're seeing in design and manufacturing from 2-dimension to 3-dimension. And so all of that wrapped up in one role excited me about being patient. I learned about this particular role from a fellow classmate that we went to grad school together, and just talking to him about, hey, what are you guys working on? And I'm looking to get into something on the tech side and be involved in leading that. And we talked through it and thought that the technical solution executive role would be a perfect fit. And when you see that role that's such a great fit for your background, time is worth it to wait for that role to become available, for you to be able to compete with it, interview for it. And I'm thankful that I was selected for the role, and I enjoy it every day.
Mm-hmm. Well, in this day and age when we can get very easily distracted, it's a huge testament to what Autodesk is offering that you stuck it out waiting for 2 years and that kept your interest for that long. So for all the reasons it kept your interest that you just explained, really helpful to hear that. Aisha, we discussed the juggle of motherhood in our conversation, and obviously Natalie just shared her perspective on that. how does Autodesk provide the support and flexibility that you need to show up as a leader at work and also a mom and a leader at home?
Okay, so also I joined during COVID,
Okay.
4 years ago. So schools were closed, nurseries were closed. No one can support me at home, and I'm working really with my kids. I remember that I joined the onboarding, and it was like an intensive onboarding, 8 hours a day. And my daughter was in my hands, and I was amazed by the culture of recognition, of the appreciation for a mom in Autodesk. And they would told me, no, feel free, it's okay, just be relaxed as you want. And they were very supportive, they were very helpful, and I was really appreciating this. And I was expecting that it is just onboarding and like things later might be changed, but no, everyone I met in Autodesk, wherever you know, they know that you are a mom for one kid or two or three, for in my case, they just starting appreciating you and empowering you and supporting you. So you feel you are really empowered. You fuel again when you just connect with people and you just tell them that you are a mom. You re-energize and energize yourself, and that's really amazing. But also above on this, we have flexible work hours. We have remote option for working remotely. When you are not be able to be in the office, that's fine. We have a lot of employee resources groups like AWN that Natalie is leading, where we provide mentoring circles, where we connect all together as women, supporting each other, sharing our challenges, and empower each other again. Also, what I really appreciate at Autodesk, that the commitment of Autodesk for employee well-being. So they provide a lot of resources to support you to balance between your work and personal life, starting from adding some extra day offs that we have as globally. We all just be relaxed, and it's day offs for you. And also we have access on multiple platforms like Clayos, Bravely, where you can reach out to an individual consultant, coach, who supports you to be more self-aware, to reflect, to relax. And this is really amazing. We need this as moms, we need this as women. So when you have a company that is really supporting you through all these things, it's something wonderful. You have always options, you have people to connect with, you have applications. If you don't want to connect with an employee internally, you can speak with a consultant, and it's pure confidential for you. It's just for you, and that's amazing.
Mhm. For any one with HR influence on this call, this is the gold standard of some benefits that you can provide. So Autodesk seems to really be going above and beyond and proactively trying to support employees no matter what stage of life they find themselves in. So thank you for sharing that. And kids are not the most reliable coworkers. So I'm so impressed to hear that even in onboarding, you were balancing all of those things and they were supporting you in
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it was not easy, but it's the way that you start to be more adaptable and more also connected with your purpose. As Natalie mentioned, you are more focused and productive because you have more clarity on your purpose.
Mm-hmm. That's great to hear. Natalie, you spoke on this a little bit earlier, but years into management, what have you really learned about calling out the strengths of and developing the growth areas within your direct reports?
Mm-hmm. Well, we spoke already quite a lot about feedback, but I think it's not to be underestimated the kind of opportunities that you have to share feedback. It shouldn't be a formal event, once a quarter we decide we're going to share some feedback with each other about our performance. It should be something that you get comfortable with doing all the time. And I've seen that have an impact as well, not only at work, but then in my personal life and my ability to communicate better. More pragmatically, even in my personal relationships with my husband, with my kids. I think that communication, skills around communication, they help us to just be yes, better communicators, but to do things in a better way in many areas as outside of our professional lives. And I think that one thing that we tend to do, and that I've also done myself, is that we often ask, what can I do better? What can I do better? What can I do better? But we don't stop to really reflect on, okay, what am I doing really well? And for actually quite a small investment of effort, how can I make that good into great? And I read some research recently from, I think it was sort of Harvard Business Review, and it talks about how, if we invested the same amount of energy and effort into things that we consider to be weaknesses or improvement areas into our strengths, we would see a much greater overall increase in our skills versus concentrating on something that actually maybe we're not that good at or we're never going to be great at. So I think that's also a common misconception, is sometimes we think, okay, those things I can do, but these things I really need to work on. We shouldn't forget about improvement areas, but we should really bring the strengths into the picture and just think, okay, with these small tweaks, how can I do good to great, and then be actually a much more impactful sort of development plan versus just focusing on what don't I do great. And again, like Aisha was talking about earlier, that tends to be something that's women we would navigate to or gravitate to a bit more naturally than talking about actually what are we good at and how can we be even better at that.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. And we had a question come through for you, Natalie, in delivering difficult feedback. How do you actually prep for those conversations and handle it when a person is being defensive?
Yeah. Something that I use, which I think is really helpful, is SBI, which is a common sort of framework: situation, behavior, and impact. And it helps you to focus on describing basically a situation that you witnessed, talking about some behavior that you witnessed, and then explaining the impact that it had on you. That might not be the way that the person intended it, but it helps you to kind of build a foundation for that conversation on kind of factual conversation. It takes the emotion a little bit out of the conversation. I had a conversation recently with my sister who was asking me for some relationship advice, and we were using this as a framework to how she would actually be able to have a more constructive conversation with her partner. So I think that's a good way of dealing with it. And depending on the level of sort of emotion, always, if you feel that someone is maybe not receiving it in the way that you intend it, is to explain your intent, even maybe before you share feedback, so that to ask the person for permission to explain that you want to give them some feedback and that your intention is to help them to be better at something, or to help engage whatever you know about their intrinsic motivation or where they're trying to get to in their career, linking it to that big picture, and helping them understand why you would share that feedback with them and why you want, why it's important for you to care about their personal development. So I think if you can bring those things into the conversation using something like SBI as a framework, and just being completely composed in your own self, there's only so much you can control. And if it's a situation where you feel that it isn't the best time and maybe it would make more sense to come back to the conversation, it's also fine to say, look, I'm reading that maybe this isn't the best time. Might be better if we come back to this conversation tomorrow or a different time. And you can also feel okay about kind of taking that off the table and bringing it back when it makes a bit more sense.
Mm-hmm. I love that you point out the intent piece and reminding them that you have the best of intentions and you're trying to help them get to their goal. I think a lot of times people think of feedback and critical feedback as, oh, I'm doing something wrong, this is a negative conversation. But actually, as a manager, if you weren't giving feedback, that's worse, because you're kind of saying, okay, I'm washing my hands of you. I don't think you can get better. By giving feedback, you're saying, I do think you can get better. You can improve. You can reach these goals that you've talked about with me. And here's how we can get there together. So that's a really good point. All right. This last question is for all of you. And we'll start with you, Aisha. In my conversation with each of you, I truly was struck by your willingness to give back despite your demanding jobs. So, for example, Aisha, and you do free consultations to uncover competencies of other professionals on LinkedIn and help them navigate. Natalie, you're leading EMEA Women's Network with Autodesk, which are diversity initiatives within the company. And Veronica, you help women in STEM, like you mentioned earlier, to kind of find their voice and get breaking through a more traditional male dominated industry. Do you believe, and Aisha, we'll start with you, like I said, that this is a coincidence that there's this kind of give back natural inclination from at least you three, or do you think it's indicative of the culture and the value alignment within Autodesk?
So I believe it's the culture that we work as collaborative as we can and Autodesk, and we act as one Autodesk. We support each other. So part of the support, part of this being collaborative is you support others like the way that you expect to get support from others. Through the past years, I had the privilege to connect with a lot of mentors where they supported me and they inspired me. They gave me a lot of like directions and supported me with a lot of opportunities. So I think it's my time now to reward this to others, people, and support them to expand, to unlock their potential, to have this success journey together. And for us, we have an official mentorship program in Autodesk. Aside of the mentoring circles that we have with employee resources groups, we have a mentorship program where you can connect with anyone in Autodesk based on your, let's say, competences, based on your preferences. So you can connect with people, so you can ask them to be your mentor, to support you in a certain areas. And this is all about your commitment of personal development. So I think having this platform is really important everywhere, and that's something that always like provide you with a personal commitment to mentor people, to support them, because this relationship is a collaborative journey where the mentee and the mentor, they learn and they grow together. So it's, I think, like it's part of our values, it's part of our culture, and the platforms that we have that always encourage us to connect with people, to be either mentee or a mentors for others and support everyone to grow. So yes, it's part of our culture, I think.
Yeah, that's really helpful examples that are tangible for us to see what's going on internally. Veronica, would you add anything to that?
Sure, I have to agree. It is definitely a part of our culture. And it's something that we don't turn off when we go home after a day's work. It's something that's ingrained in us. And once we pour that into our customers as we work through our workday, when we go home, we pour that into our communities. And I think us all having this special experience as women, it does a disservice if we keep all that knowledge to ourselves. And so I'm passionate about sharing my story to just give others an additional motivation to try new things, to blaze a path forward, even though you may not see someone that looks like you on the other side, and to pull support from other areas, other organizations, linking to things like LinkedIn and that type of thing in order to be able to reach out to different resources and know how to do that, and just letting others know that you're not alone in these different paths, management paths, leadership paths, sales paths, technology paths. And I have to commend Autodesk because we're a pretty large global company, but we still are able to have a family feel when it comes to our teams and even reaching out globally to others. I know I've developed some new colleagues on this call today that I'll be able to reach out to for different things as I grow in sales at Autodesk. And so, yeah, I agree. It's definitely a cultural thing.
Mm-hmm. And I don't say this flippantly. I truly have felt that interacting with your team over the last few weeks preparing for this conversation. Y'all are a large company, but each conversation I've had with you has felt very cozy and comfortable and very aligned. I'm not hearing mixed messaging between conversations, and that is a true sign, I think, of the interconnectedness and truly the foundation that Autodesk has been built on, which has been great to see, especially at such a global level. Natalie, what are your thoughts on this?
I won't add much on top of what the ladies have already said because I think I very much aligned with what they've said. But in my experience, nobody gets anywhere alone. We have all got to the places that we're in today because we've had sponsors, we've had mentors, we've had people who have stuck their neck out for us, people who have, put confidence in us when perhaps other people haven't. And that's the reason that we've been successful. We've had to bring some of those things ourselves, but we would never have gotten where we've gotten to today. And we won't get the things that we've got in the future without that broader team and network and, cheerleaders and family support. So I just feel also an obligation to also do that for other people, because it's similarly to what Veronica said, it's for me then to sponsor those other people who are perhaps, in the place that I was in 10 years ago, or are looking to have their first child and they're not really sure how it's going to impact their career, and they're worried about coming back to work and how they balance that. And again, similarly to what both ladies were saying, being an example of something less commonly seen in a leadership environment or a sales environment. So, a working mother of 2 young children, I think is, we're starting to see more of it, but it's really important for that representation to be there and for the voice to be there, and for the advocacy to be there. So I feel like that's my responsibility, and I'm really passionate about doing it, and will continue to be passionate about it.
Amazing. All three of you brought different perspectives, but there's a cohesion across the board. And I think it's been great to be able to share that with our community today. We do have another question here. Natalie, since you kind of wrapped up your statement around motherhood, I'll start with you on this one. Advice for being able to prioritize, because as a mother, you're juggling a lot, and this person wants to show up for her team members, help them grow, but feeling a bit overwhelmed with the responsibilities at home and really navigating how to prioritize what's most important at work.
Hard question. I don't know if I have a good answer. I don't have a good answer. I think it's really easy to get into this guilt cycle when you're a parent and working, because when you're working you feel guilty for not being with your kids, and when you're with your kids you feel guilty because you're not working. And I think we have to just let go of that, because it isn't productive, and it's an inevitability that everybody feels. I think it's more about trying to find a harmony. I don't think it really exists much, but trying to find some sort of harmony where you say, like, this can work for me. You're not going to do a 45-hour week when you've got young kids. You just can't do it. Finding the balance, again, balance is the wrong word, finding a harmony that you can be happy with, and sort of just trying to let go of some of the kind of guilt that comes along with it, and just saying, like, I'm enough. I'm enough in this job and I'm enough at home. Because we look for this, I'm going to be the most amazing professional, I'm going to be the most amazing parent, and I don't think that it exists, and I don't think that it's the reality. And maybe you see something else on social media or whatever, but it isn't the reality. And I think even if you ask some of the execs in our company that are in this situation, they will tell you the same thing. So trying to look for a situation that you feel okay about, and you feel like, okay, this can work for me, but accepting that it's never going to feel perfect or balanced, really. I think it's just a part of navigating this experience. And I don't really have a perfect formula, I'm afraid, to share. And I think that's just the reality.
I think just knowing there's not a perfect formula out there is helpful to hear. Anyone have anything else to add in our last 2 minutes to that question?
Yeah, I can say, like, we are, as women, we look into perfectionist a lot. There is no need to be perfect. Let go. Focus on what you have in your hands. And as Natalie said, you are enough there. You are enough at home. So sometimes it's very important to let go part of our perfectionist as women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great reminders. Thank you so much for your transparency in today's conversation. I really enjoyed it. I know our audience got a lot out of it. As a reminder to the audience, we'll send a recap tomorrow over email with highlights from today's conversations and the recording, so you can watch all the good times over and over again if you so choose. To check out open roles at Autodesk, like I mentioned, they're hiring in a lot of different locations. Visit womeninSalesEverywhere.com. And in addition to our 2 in-person events that are happening in August, I'm thrilled to announce that we have an event hosted by Autodesk in Atlanta coming up in September. So mark your calendars for September 25th. We'll be sending out more details on that soon. As always, we invite you to come for the conversation and stay for the community. See you next time. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Have a great day.
Bye.